I thank the chairman. I thank the committee. I'll try and, I guess, start as simply as I know how, which is Dr. Edwards, I think at the end of Mr. Carter's testimony, asked a question of Ms. Hedman, and I'll go ahead and ask it. He asked, did you warn Flint residents to flush their water?
On July 10th, 10 days after I first learned about this, EPA Region 5 issued the first statement advising Flint residents to get their water tested by their water utility and referring them to EPA information on the web about limiting exposure to lead in drinking water.
So is that your testimony when you said you gave them warning to flush their water? That's what you're referring to?
Right, that was the first time that we did that.
Okay, that was in July.
July 10th.
I'm looking at an email that's been mentioned a couple times, and to the extent it's not been entered in the record, Mr. Chairman, it's an email of Miguel Del Toro dated September 22nd, 2015. I asked it to be added to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I'm sitting here, are you familiar with this email, Ms. Hedman?
I'm not sure what the email is.
It begins, it's to Thomas Ploy, Rita Baer, Nicholas D'Amato, Joanna Glowacki, and Andrea Porter, amongst others, from Miguel Del Toro, September 22nd, 2015. Begins, this is no surprise, lead lines plus no treatment equals high lead in water equals lead poisoned children. You familiar with that email?
Only hearing it from you.
Okay. If you read down the email, by the way, I think the email was an email that you sent, Mr. Edwards, that was then forwarded. I'll get to that in a second, I hope. It says, even worse, absent anything from EPA, MDEQ, and the city other than they are in full compliance. Other folks have to alert the public to the risk. Do you get the impression from the email that Mr. Del Toro thinks that the EPA warned the folks in Flint in September to flush their water?
We had been told on August 31st by MDEQ that the Michigan, it was MCH, the old acronym for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, was in fact implementing a public information campaign. On September 15th, I held calls with both the mayor and with the director of MDEQ, urging expedited implementation of corrosion control and expanded public information campaigns. And the mayor and the county did issue a health advisory with that kind of information 10 days later.
All right, I wish I could go into every single one of those. I know Dr. Edwards is probably eager to do that, but I'm going to, you said something earlier today, which I think took a lot of us off guard, surprised a lot of people sitting here, when you said you didn't think the EPA had done anything wrong through this entire process. And my guess is if I asked you for evidence of that, you would lay out what you just laid out. We did this on this date, this on this date. Let me ask you this. Is that the standard to which you held yourself at the EPA? Just not to do anything wrong?
No.
What was the standard to which you held yourself when you were at the EPA?
To do the best job possible.
Did you do the best job possible?
In retrospect, knowing what I know now, I wish we had issued more frequent and more urgent statements.
But it's still your belief and your testimony that you didn't do anything, that the EPA and you didn't do anything wrong in handling the Flint situation.
As I said, I wish we had done more. I wish when MDEQ represented facts to us, we had verified those facts.
Let me ask you about that, because there's another thing you said today that, again, caught me a little bit off guard. It says the EPA, yes, in answer to questions from someone, I apologize for getting who, is supposed to step in to protect safety, but only if there is a threat, which clearly there was, and the state has failed to act. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Is it your testimony then that the state had not failed to act?
At which point in time?
At any point in time. I pick one. I don't care. September, by Mr. Del Toro's email of September 22nd, had the state failed to act by that time?
By that time, the state had issued an order to Flint directing Flint to implement corrosion control, and the mayor had announced that he was going to take that action.
My question is, had the state failed to act?
The state had taken some actions, and let me...
Not the standard. You said the EPA isn't really supposed to get involved unless there's a threat, number one, and the state has failed to act, number two. So I'm asking you, as of September, had the state failed to act?
We were involved, and the legal advice that I received at that time...
Okay, you were involved, but people were still drinking lead-contaminated water. How is that possible?
We were involved in that. There are two things that we tried every day to make happen. One is implementation of corrosion control,
Okay.
and two is a public information campaign to make sure that Flint residents knew what they needed to do to reduce risks until corrosion control worked.
I'm not going to have nearly enough time to do any of this. I do want to ask Dr. Edwards one question before we left. You said something, sir, earlier that interested me as well, which is you said that in a different environment, this would be criminal. What did you mean when you said that? I apologize if that's not the exact words, but you did use the words criminal.
I think in any environment, it's criminal when you know children are being harmed and not being protected by federal law, and you sit there silent.
And if I had,
I will point out, Virginia Tech issued the first warning to not drink the water in August 2015. MDEQ invoked the authority of EPA in its response to the press, to our warning about the dangers of Flint water, to say the water was safe to drink. EPA sat there silent, at a minimum, as the state attacked us for saying Flint water was not safe to drink.
if I had done this as a terrorist to the children of Flint and I got caught, would I be in jail?
I've already said if a landlord did this, he would be in jail.
Or a builder, a home builder, which is what I used to do. If I built a house that poisoned my residents the same way the city of Flint has done it, I'd be in jail, wouldn't I? Which leads to my last question. Ms. Hedman, should the government be held to a different standard than its citizens?
Everyone should be required to follow the law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, now